Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Ingrid's World. I'm your host, Ingrid Paris Hicklin, and on this show, you meet Cathy Alves Davis, the CEO of Myrcles, LLC. She is an inspirational speaker, author, and life coach. Cathy is best known for writing the highly acclaimed book, Myrcles. It is a pleasure to welcome Cathy Alves Davis to Ingrid's World. Cathy, so glad you're here.
Hello, Ingrid.
So I always like to start off with saying, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I grew up in a little seaside town called Duxbury, Massachusetts. I lived 3 houses up from the water with my parents and my 2 sisters. My grandparents and my uncle lived about a mile away. I had lots of aunts and uncles and cousins and lots of other family members who lived nearby. And that made for a really nice childhood. So I had a beautiful childhood, but I had one thing that was not fixable in that childhood, and that's the problem. That was I had severe asthma. And there was no magic bullet in the late 50s for asthma. There was no pills. There was no inhaler. Children just suffered, choked, wheezed, strangled, and many of them, it was too much on their hearts, and they died. And it actually still happens to this day, even though today we do have rescue inhalers. So it was a huge problem. And I had nothing to help me. So when I was in a bad asthma attack, my mother would take me downstairs and she would let me lay on the sofa down there. She never closed the curtains. So the moon's beams would be coming through the window and she would kind of soothe me. And since I had this great faith in Christ and God, and I leaned on them because they were all I had, my mother would tell me to go to Jesus. And so she'd start to describe him as she soothed me and tried to calm me down. And she would say, go to Jesus, go to sleep, and Jesus will come to you one more time and he'll heal you. So I would, in an exhausted state, I would fall off to sleep. And just as my mother had predicted, Jesus would be there with his outstretched arms and hands in his beautiful blue robe. And he would heal me one more time. And there were many things that he told me in those years that actually happened. The next day I would be a child at play, and I would tell my mother what had transpired. And she thought I was just a child telling a story about a dream. But then when the things started to really happen, she realized that it was really Jesus telling me what to do. So the beginning of the book starts out with miracles. The book is all about miracles, but it starts out with the miracles that began in my childhood and the close walk that I had with God and Christ.
So tell us, why did you write the book?
Well, I always wanted to inspire people. I always thought that would be so exciting to do something wonderful in my life. Like I wanted to do something big. I'm sure you did too, Ingrid. I'm sure that you too. Something that would really help people. So I married my high school sweetheart, and after college, he was in the Marines. We traveled all around the world. We had 3 children. We have 5 beautiful grandchildren now. But my children were in high school and college at the time. And I thought, everything was going well. I had a big job. I ran a company, but I was under extreme stress and strain. And the strain causing me a very serious problem. And I was getting ready to do my monthly breast exam, and when I did, I felt something odd underneath my left breast under a fibroid shelf that I had, and that happened. I instantly called my doctor the next day, and he told me to come into his office. He felt the same thing, but my mammogram 6 months earlier had been fine.
Uh-huh.
So he sent me for a sonogram. And the sonogram showed that something was actually growing under there. But he told me not to worry. So then I was to a surgeon, and the surgeon said that when he took the biopsy, he said that he didn't think that it was anything wrong either. It's filled with fluid. So he said, I don't think there's anything to worry about. And told me to call in a few days and get results, but he wasn't concerned about anything. So a few days later, I called, and he didn't just tell me I had breast cancer. He told me I had stage 3 breast cancer. And I want to show you the size of an orange. And it had been growing my left breast. We don't know how long, because my mammogram is always normal. So immediately, my brother-in-law is the CEO of a cancer research company in Boston, brought me to Boston and got me in with the best breast cancer team in the city. And when I went there, they gave me little hope of surviving. They told me that I was going to die. So everyone was praying for me, and I was praying. And the surgeon there sent me for a CAT scan. And I went and had the CAT scan. And if you've ever had a CAT scan, or any of your viewers have ever had a CAT scan, there's a drone sound, CAT scan machine. And then it's always done in the basement of a hospital. And then it had a big black clock on the wall, was ticking away the seconds. And all that noise that was going on, I was in the room alone. And I was praying for God. And as I was praying, God spoke to me like he had done many times before. And my prayer went way off to the distance. And he said to me, he allowed me to know that I was going to be fine. And he told me that one day I would go on to read a book of hope and inspiration that would help countless others.
Thank you, Cathy. This is beautiful. So your message, so first of all, the title of your book. How did you come to the title of that book?
Well, Ingrid, they're going to have to read the book to find out the whole story about miracles. But, of course, I did have a miracle, and the miracles are throughout the book. But, I wanted to name the book Divine Intervention, but it was a very crowded field. So we had to come up with another title. And you read how that happened. You read the book. But, it's my miracles, your miracles. Was a different way of saying miracles.
So is that the message in your book that you're communicating with us?
The message in my book is hope. The message in my book is hope, because hope is everything. Miracles is divided into 3 sections. The first section is the gift of faith. And faith is a gift. All you have to do is step out and take it and believe. The second section is the gift of adversity. And adversity is a gift, because if we don't have adversity in our life, we don't grow closer to God and Christ. We think we're really in control, and we think that we can get through this life smooth sailing. But when we have adversity, it grows our faith. And that's what makes us closer to God and Christ. And then the third section is the gift of hope and inspiration. Because, again, hope is everything. And it's filled with hope. It's filled with hope and inspiration.
Wow. Well, what was the most difficult part about writing your book?
Well, I had never written a book, and I didn't aspire to be an author. And so I was always a good storyteller, though. I love to tell a story. I was my grandfather's granddaughter, and he was a great storyteller before me. So I always loved telling a story. So then I had to take that storytelling ability and put that on paper. And that was very difficult. So I had to actually become a storyteller and a reader. And that was a job. But like I like to say, I coined this phrase, I typed and God whispered. There were many nights when I finished writing at 1:00 in the morning, and then I would go to bed, and 5:00 in the morning, I felt an urging to get up and continue writing this book, this mission that God gave me. And so I would start typing at 5 a.m., but I didn't know what we said, and I would go to bed, and about noon the next day, I'd go, what did I write? I've got to get back to writing the book. Mm-hmm. And of course, I would read it, and I'd be like, wow, I wrote that.
Wow. And it's just beautiful. So about how you're putting it all together. So your process, how did you get the beautiful book cover? Because we're showing it on screen, your beautiful book cover. What's the story behind that?
Well, I wanted a beautiful picture of the beach. And my husband actually gave me the idea to look up, to find online a picture of my beach. So I looked and I actually found that exact picture online. Mm-hmm. And the man who had taken that picture, his name is Matt Harriger. And he actually is a photographer. Unbelievably so, he had grown up in Duxbury decades after me. But anyway, I wrote to him and I asked him if I could have that book I was writing. I could have that picture as I was writing a spiritual book. And he was a spiritual man too. So he said, absolutely, and the picture is yours. So I got the picture.
Wow.
And I had to publish the book myself to begin with, because I'm not a celebrity. No one would have picked me up unless I published it myself. And it had to get a little notoriety. It had to have people read it, and it got continuous 5-star reviews. And then a publisher in New York City picked it up, Morgan James Publishing. And I thought, now you know what? It's my chance now to enhance the cover. So I took that picture and I worked with someone overseas, and she could actually conceptualize my vision. Like the sun's rays reaching out to the reader,
yes,
showing that it was heaven sent. Miracles were heaven sent.
Wow. So what do you want your readers to remember when they get that wonderful book, Myrcles? What do you want them to remember from that book, from your book?
Well, I met a lady shortly after I was diagnosed, and she was a stranger to me, but she wanted to actually show me and tell me what she had gone through. So she came to my sister's house when I was in Boston, and she and I went into the restroom. And she said, I'd like to show you my breast because you're probably going to lose your breast, which incidentally, I did not.
Wow.
So she opened up her blouse and I looked at her breast, completely normal. And she said, she gave up her own modesty to help another woman. But she gave me this advice. She said, I want you to remember these 4 little words. Stay in the day.
Ooh.
And those words were so important. And I used to think about them all the time when I was going through chemotherapy. Stay in the day. And my husband would remind me when I said, well, what about next month or a few more months from now? And he'd say, oh, we're going to stay in the day. That's what we do. And no matter what was thrown at me, we stayed in the day. And that's how I got through chemotherapy. And that's how I learned to live my life from that day. Because none of us are promised tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
And hope is, facing adversity. And that's another thing that I head on. And so I wanted my reader to get that as well. Stay in the day and hope.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful. So do you hear from your readers, and what do they say?
I hear from them all the time, Ingrid.
Oh.
And they find a way to get in touch with me. I mean, they've done unbelievable things to get in touch with me. And what they say is, once they get the book, and then they just kind of want to page, they want to go through a few pages just to see what it's all about. Once they do that, they're hooked, and they cannot put it down. And many readers say they read it from cover to cover the first time they open it. And then they're always sad when it ends, so they often read it a second time.
That's beautiful. Did you always see yourself as becoming an author? Did you ever see that as something that you wanted to do?
No, I never thought about being an author. I was the head of a company. I loved what I did. I was going back to school, in fact, to become a psychologist. I loved helping people, but I never thought about writing a book. But God made me an author.
So that's beautiful. And so you were talking about your writing process. How did you get started? You said God whispers and you type. What's your process? How do you?
Well, as soon as God gave me that mission, I was in a life or death struggle. And I said, you know what? I'm taking God's hand and I'm going to get through this no matter what.
Right.
So he gave me a job to do. So I was entered into a protocol at Georgetown at Lombardi Cancer Research Center. And I'd always gone to work because I was an executive, my briefcase. And so I took that briefcase that I loved, and instead I bought a couple of notebooks and a couple of pretty pens. And everything that happened to me or that I did during that time, during those years, I wrote it all down. So when I went to write the book, I could make a great outline, all those notes in those notebooks.
Wow. So I want to know if your book is made into a movie, who are some of the celebrities you would like to see that would star in it?
Well, first of all, Ingrid, I believe completely it's going to be made into a movie.
Okay, that's what I'm talking. Let's call it into action. That's what yeah, let's call it in.
And Ingrid, I've known this from day one.
Yes.
I knew it when God spoke to me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fabulous movie because I have overcome cancer. And so I knew that was going to happen. So I thought oftentimes about who would play me and
yes,
and who would be, and that they would make a film of it because it's such an inspirational story. And I've often thought about maybe Jessica Lange.
Love her.
And then maybe Meryl Streep.
Yes.
Just to name a few. But I know it's going to be a movie.
Yeah, let's call it in. We have to speak it. We're going to speak it into existence.
Yes.
Yes, we're speaking it into existence because when I, and I watch television, so I, sometimes flip, and guess what? All these negative gloom and doom, no hope. And I keep saying, okay. And so I wound up watching the History Channel. I said, maybe I can watch something that, people are not hurting one another. So it is just wonderful. How do readers, so someone's finding out about your book and, how are they going to find out more about you and how to get your book and where should we be going?
Okay, well, my book is in bookstores everywhere.
Okay.
And, you can go to the front desk. I'm not a celebrity, so if it's not there, you can go to the front desk and ask for it, and they'll get it, believe me.
Are you in the public library also?
I'm in the public library, yes. And if you go to my Facebook page, Cathy Alves, Alves, Davis, or you can go to my Facebook page, Myrcles, Myrcles. And I have a website, www.myrcles.com.
Nice.
And on that website, it tells where I'm at. I do a lot of book clubs. People invite me into their home when they have Myrcles for the month. So you find out where I'm at.
Find out where you're at.
And then you can invite me to your book club.
Oh.
And I do a lot of speaking engagements at different churches and women's clubs and different venues.
That's beautiful. So what's next for you? Because you have started this. What's next? What's next on the horizon?
Well, right now I'm having such a wonderful time promoting Myrcles and getting Myrcles out there. Because remember, God said it's going to help countless others. And although Myrcles has touched thousands of lives, it hasn't touched all the lives he wants to touch. So I'll be happy when I'm at that movie preview, Ingrid, and you'll be there with me, right?
I will be there with you. I'm just telling you, I see it. It fits. I'm a big Hallmark Channel watcher.
Yes, I am too.
Oh, okay, good. Kindred spirits. And so it fits with that being hopeful, being uplifted, and I think that's what is so important. But those who are out there because we have lots of people who are watching this show who I hope will watch it. What are words that you can say to them if they're facing something that's troubling? They have your book, but as an author and one who has gone through a major illness, what's your words of inspiration to them?
Never give up and stay in the day. My experience, life or death, was 23 years ago. And here I am today, helping people everywhere to keep believing and to keep hope alive.
Oh, and keep believing and keep hope alive. And, and I think that's really keep believing, because a lot of times you get this diagnosis, but, you can have another one, and it's being faithful and having hope.
Yes.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show, Cathy, because what's happened is that you're inspiring others who are watching it, giving them hope, and they can go to your website, be further inspired, and I think that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wonderful book with us.
Thank you so much for having me and highlighting my book today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this interview. I certainly did, and certainly inspirational and affirming, because we all must have hope and just believe and live in the day. What beautiful words we heard from our author. My inspirational quote this time is from Mother Teresa. Life is an opportunity. Benefit from it. Life is beauty. Admire it. Life is a dream. Realize it. Thank you for watching Ingrid's World. And don't forget to friend us on Facebook and follow Ingrid's World VA in Twitter and Instagram. And if you miss an episode, watch Ingrid's World on YouTube or at ingridsworld.org. Thanks for watching.